Welcome to the Mendocino County Fire Safe Council Radio Show. My name's Cobb. I'm in the studio, and I am joined via Zoom with the director of the Mendocino County Fire Safe Council, our host, Scott Craddy. Welcome, Scott.
Good morning. Just as a quick intro, so to be prepared, you want to do everything you need to do to get your home ready. So you want to do your home hardening, you want to do your defensible space clearing, and when you do those things, you'll do yourself an immense favor in terms of increasing the survivability of your home. But you also want to know that your home is reasonably insured, because wildfires are unpredictable. The authority that I go to for advice on that is United Policyholders. Their website, which we'll talk about briefly, is an awesome wealth of information on all aspects of the topic. And we are fortunate to have with us Amy Bach, Executive Director of United Policyholders this morning. Good morning, Amy. Can you give us a little intro to United Policyholders?
Sure. Good morning, and thanks so much for having me on. And I'm so glad that you exist. The information you're getting out there, obviously, in your region is critically important. So, yeah, United Policyholders is a 501c3, so we're a nonprofit, and we were founded in 1991 out of the shared conviction between myself and the other co-founder that people who buy insurance needed an organization, a place to go, a safe place to go to get information about insurance. People wouldn't be trying to sell them something because I, as a longtime consumer advocate and an attorney, had recognized early in my career that with insurance being mandatory for a lot of things, you have to buy it to drive, you have to buy it to get a loan, that insurers have a lot of power and control in the marketplace, and that needs to be kept in balance because the reason, obviously, that people are willing to pay for insurance, not just to be complying with laws, but to protect their assets and and so that if something goes wrong, to protect their quality of life and have a safety net. And because of the fact that insurance companies are for profit, they're not government entities, they're not charities. You need a healthy balance, right? You need a balance between the consumer and the provider, and there wasn't one, we felt. So I got together with a woman who'd been adjusting claims for State Farm for her whole career. She had come out of the Loma Prieta earthquake very, very frustrated that she felt that the company was not training their adjusters properly, and they were missing serious structural damage, and they were telling people, oh, you will just slap a coat of paint, it's just cosmetic, but we don't owe you any money because of the deductible. So she was determined to fix that problem, and I was determined to fix the problem of insurers having basically writing their own ticket in legislatures and just kind of always being the deciders. So we brought UP into the world right when the Oakland fire hit. And so that kind of became, helping people recover from wildfires became a primary focus of the organization. So fast forward to today, we're spending a lot of time working with fire safe councils and FireWise community people and public officials and firefighters and thinkers and researchers trying to restore some stability to the home insurance market in areas like yours, where insurers have raised rates, panicked, dropped people, somewhat understandably. We did have 4 years in a row of horrifying devastation, but we're trying to kind of moderate their response, bring them back, but also get them to partner with and not just punish their customers. And so we are working very hard right now to establish what I think everybody acknowledges has to happen, which is a set of standards that everyone agrees to, that if you do A, B, C, D, E, your home will be less likely to burn, and that should get you a reward of some kind, either that you get to keep your insurance or your insurance will be more affordable for you. So we're working toward that through something that we call WRAP, which stands for WRAP, Wildfire Risk Reduction and Asset Protection. And we've got a wonderful coalition going. And we've been meeting on a regular basis and hearing from all different experts. And we're just trying to get us to where the insurance industry will accept the premise that there are things you can do to prevent a house from burning. Because believe it or not, the main lobbyists for insurance companies in Sacramento have been saying for years, and they continue to say the same thing, which is that if you can do everything you want to your house, but if your neighbor doesn't do anything, your house is still going to burn, and therefore we don't want to reward we don't want to reward people because we're not convinced yet, and they're way behind, right? The insurance lobbyists are behind. The rest of us are like, well, we know that's not true. We know that. Well, we certainly know that community fire risk reduction is the most important, and then of course individual is very important too. And so we're just trying to get California to a place where hurricane-prone states got many years ago, which is we need a mitigation program, we need standards in place, we need financial assistance for people to harden their homes, we need resources to help people clear defensible space if they can't afford to or physically do it themselves. And there needs to be incentives, insurance incentives and insurance rewards for the whole system to work. And we can get there. I mean, if a red state like South Carolina, can require insurance companies to offer discounts to people who fortify their homes against hurricanes, that California can do the same thing. So that's where we are.
It's great. Thank you. That sounds like critically important work. So before we sort of jump to what people can do to check their policies and what happens if some advice if they're canceled, which I hope to get to in the bit of time we have. What if people want to help that effort that's going on now? What's the best thing they can do to support that?
Well, certainly, thank you for acknowledging our website. We work very hard to make it useful. And I would say, visit our website, uphelp.org, UP, like the opposite of down, help.org, uphelp.org. And, if you do get, for example, a non-renewal notice from your insurance company, or you're struggling with a premium that is doubled or tripled or worse, you can watch one of our shopping help webinars. I recorded a couple of them, one earlier this year, one last year, where I got some insurance brokers that really know what's going on in the market, and I grilled them, on camera. And so we have some really nice little tips for people. So I'd say, we say to people, don't panic, but don't try to hide, right? Because, the way the law is now, your insurance company is free to drop you when your policy comes up for renewal, as long as they give you 75 days notice. And you can't force them to keep you as a customer. That comes as a shock to a lot of people. And so, just deal with what is, right? If you want, you live in a place that's beautiful, but that we now know to be a little more risky than we thought in the past, and it's just the reality, and you can't really change that reality. So all you can do is adapt, right? Which is why we talk about fire adapted communities. But yeah, I would recommend people go to our website. We're a 501c3. Certainly we exist on donations, but we also exist on volunteers. So if you are active in your community in helping your neighbors or helping yourself keep a homestead that is that's trimmed up and as reasonably fire safe as you can, you're doing your part. But it definitely, as the years go by and we keep doing this work, it's just clear as day that we've got to do this as communities. We got to do it together.
Right.
Right. So.
Cool. Thank you. So getting to some of the prep, I think one of the great points I've heard you made before is that, you need to do it now, because if something does happen, you're not in the right psychological space to do the prep work then and to deal with the insurance things then. So you want to start working through this stuff now. One of the things I saw on your website is that, as probably a surprise to most people, but maybe not, is that the vast majority of people that do have an incident discover that they are underinsured after the fact. So, one of the important things to do is to step back and take some steps to make sure, if you're lucky enough to have a policy that you can afford, that it's something that's really going to cover your full replacement. Can you talk to us a little bit about how to approach that?
Yes, and it's interesting. We before the current kind of somewhat of a crisis in availability and affordability of home insurance in rural areas in California, we spent much of our time on the preparedness side, trying to help people grasp that concept that you were just talking about, that you're probably underinsured, because 2/3 of the people that come to us after wildfires are underinsured. And we're talking not like, $10,000, but like hundreds of thousands of dollars, for some people. And there's lots of reasons for it. And I don't think it's going to be worth our time to talk about why that is. But the most important thing is to okay, so what do you do about it? And so I think one of the most concrete pieces of advice I can give your listeners is to figure out or find whatever document is available to you that tells you approximately how many square feet of living space you have. So, if you have let's say you have a 1,000 square foot home, and then find your insurance policy. It's always good to know where your insurance policy is, particularly these days. Great if it's stored digitally, that you know how to access that file, or if your insurance company has some sort of portal that you know how to log onto and somehow remember your password to get into. Look at your coverage A. Look at the amount of insurance on your dwelling. It's usually in a bucket called coverage A, and look at that number. And then divide that number by the square footage of your house. So if you have, $100,000 of coverage on your dwelling, and you divide that by 1,000, then you have $100 per square foot to rebuild that house. Okay, that's just simple math. But in California, $100 a square foot is not going to even possibly get you a tiny house. So the reality is that you should try to get that number, that instead of having the 100,000 for your coverage A for your 1,000 square foot home, you want at least, if you can afford it, you want at least like $250 to like $300 a square foot, which comes as a shock to a lot of people. People are like, how is that possible? Well, it is. That's just the way it is, especially because after wildfires, there's supply and demand. So, lumber goes up and prices go up and your insurance is supposed to account for that. They're supposed to have figured that out. But the bottom line is, we tell people, try to get your dwelling insured to value, and it won't cost you, usually it won't cost you a lot more to adjust your coverage A up a notch, another maybe 100,000 or so, or more. It's not going to change your premium that much. And so we tell people, don't be penny wise and pound foolish about your insurance on your dwelling. Now, things like your stuff, your contents, stuff is stuff. I mean, it's important, but it's much more important that you have enough insurance to put that house back if it were to be burned to the ground. And the reality is 2/3 of the people that we encounter do not have enough insurance. So we encourage people to take it. You hear my words, right? Call your insurance company, call your agent, and say, hey, I heard this woman on the radio, and she says that a lot of people don't have enough insurance after wildfires. Well, they're not going to argue with you there because it's been in the news, right? I don't want to be one of those people, and make sure you have a piece of paper and a pen, and you start writing. And the questions to ask are, do I have enough insurance to put my house back if it were to burn to the ground? Do I have enough to cover improvements that the county would make me make, plumbing, electric, you have code upgrade coverage is the technical term. And then if you have outbuildings, are my outbuildings covered? And then how much temporary rent coverage would I have? Because, no one wants to think about the worst happening, although you can't put it out of your mind too far these days, right? There's constant reminders of the threat of wildfires. So what we say to people is, don't be penny wise and pound foolish about your insurance, because if you tell your insurance company and your agent, I just want the cheapest policy, I guarantee you're going to be underinsured. And you've wasted some money, because the point of paying for insurance is that it actually is going to put you back where you were, right? And the only way that's going to happen is if you've got enough of it. So we say, carry a higher deductible, raise your deductible is the best way to keep the price down. So buy more coverage, but have a higher deductible. That will keep it affordable. And then shop, and for a lot of people, they don't have a choice anymore. They're going to be with the FAIR plan. But even with the FAIR plan, you do have choices. And so, I'd say probably one of the most important messages I want to get out there to your readers or your listeners, is 15 minutes is not enough time to insure your biggest asset, right? So spend some time, be a little nerdy, ask questions about your insurance, write the answers down. If the insurance agent or the company tells you to make adjustments, if you can afford to, make those adjustments, raise your deductible. I carry a $5,000 deductible on my home insurance in San Francisco. Why? Because I'm a consumer advocate and I know that that's going to get me the biggest bang for the buck. I'm going to get more coverage. I'm not going to put in small claims that are going to cost me more down the road than I'm going to get anyway. And that's sort of what a lot of savvy, people do.
Hey, I'm going to break in there just real quick. This is Cobb with KZYX Radio. If you just tuned in, this is the Mendocino County Fire Safe Council Radio Show. Our guest today, with host Director Scott Craddy, is Amy Bach, the Executive Director of EUP, United Policyholders, Providers of Information for Insurance Customers. Pardon me, Amy. And I wonder, as we move forward, I have two questions. One is if you could briefly just tell what your company is again, just give a really quick history again as you did at the beginning. And then my next question is, associated with any disaster, is cleanup another category that people need to research? Thanks.
Thank you. So United Policyholders is a nonprofit, and our mission is to be a trustworthy, reliable, useful source of information and a voice for consumers of all types of insurance throughout the United States. And I think you had another question there. Could you?
Yeah, I was wondering about the cleanup, post-disaster.
Right, debris removal. Yes, debris removal. Thank you. So yes, people often do find themselves in rural areas a little short on debris removal as well. And the trick there is it comes right back to how much you have on your dwelling, because typically the amount of available insurance that you will have to clean up debris after a fire is going to be tied to the amount of insurance on the home. So if the home is underinsured, you're typically going to be underinsured in your other categories, including debris removal. Now, in wildfire areas in California today, the trend is that there is coordinated debris removal options. So you can decide, I'm going to go on my lot and clean. I'm going to hire somebody to clean up my own lot, or I'm going to go with the government coordinated program. And each fire, the government coordinated program seems to get a little bit more organized and better. And the reason that it matters is, it's often you want to get the debris removed, but you want to do it safely. And so, you want the debris to be, it often has hazardous materials. So you don't want to hire, Joe dump truck who's going to dump it off the side of the, mountain or something. Right. So you need to do it safely. But again, it really helps to have enough insurance to pay for that cost.
Right. And one other
Thank you.
question, something you touched on in your earlier language was the FAIR program. Can you outline what that is briefly?
Yeah. So in California, we have something called the California FAIR Plan, and it's basically an insurer of last resort. So if you cannot find a company in the private market that wants to insure your home, you can go to the FAIR Plan. And as long as your house isn't made of matchsticks, generally they're gonna sell you a policy. And it's a program that was set up in the 60s. I doubt it would get set up today, but it was set up for inner city areas in LA where people were getting redlined by insurers and they couldn't insure their properties. And so the state created this forced pool of insurance companies. And now it's a godsend to people in rural areas. It's not perfect. You pay a pretty penny for what you get, but it will satisfy your loan requirements. And if you shop carefully, and you can get adequate coverage. It's basic, but it's a huge help to people.
Yep. And just jump in there. So thank you. In just a few minutes, we're going to pivot and do the second half of the show with Assemblymember Jim Wood. So we're going to kind of wrap up with Amy. I first want to say, again, in case people didn't get it, their website is just a treasure trove of information. So write down uphelp.org. And for example, on the topic we were just talking about, there's a great article on the lowdown on the California FAIR Plan that goes through bit by bit with considerations and things you should think about and consider with all the different options with that plan, if that's where you end up going. So there's a great sort of step-by-step guide because there's a lot of different options and details that can come into play there. What I'd like to touch on in addition to giving you a chance for any kind of last minute comments that you want to make, Amy, is just kind of another important message I've heard before is for people who do get a cancellation notice, just sort of what the right frame of mind is to be in there. As I understand, the agents, the world out there changes from week to week, and an insurance company that's canceling people one week may be accepting them the next week. So that there's the approach is that people need to do a lot of work and be patient and make a lot of calls. And could you just give us a little bit about, if you get that cancellation notice, what's the approach to take?
Yeah, well, you've got a great guest coming up because he's actually been a big help to homeowners on wildfire issues in the legislature. So that's great. The reality is that if you do get that non-renewal notice, you're gonna want that full 75 days to shop, and don't panic. People tend to get very emotional. How can State Farm break up with me? We've been together for 30 years, and it's just like, get over that, okay? Move on and start shopping. Because when I did a webinar in the fall of 2020 with an agent who works part-time for the FAIR Plan, and the message was clearer then that it's changing all the time, like that and you can go into the FAIR Plan, but you can get out as soon as you find an alternative, right? So start shopping, and don't just talk to one agent, talk to like 3, because you might get a different story from each of them depending on the relationships that agent has. So if you go to an agent, a farmer's agent, they want to keep you even if Farmers doesn't want you. So they may try to put you with somebody that they can. You want to talk to the agent that has multiple relationships. So like an independent agent is going to be your best bet. No hit on farmers, but their agents can generally only sell a farmer's product, right? If you go to what's called an independent agent, they have a whole, typically they're going to have like 5, 6, or 7 or more insurers with whom they have relationships with. So the situation is dynamic. And it is changing. 1 week I hear, State Farm's holding on to a lot of people. And then the next week I hear, that people were getting non-renewed. So don't go on rumors. do your own research, use our website. That's what it's there for. And just put the time in, and you will find coverage somehow. And if it's not the price point that you feel comfortable with, keep shopping. And if you have to sacrifice some coverage, don't sacrifice the dwelling coverage. You could sacrifice, reduce your contents coverage or reduce your other structures, or like I said, raise your deductible. But try to keep an eye on insuring your dwelling adequately. And then the last thing is do that inventory. You have a smartphone, take your smartphone, walk around your house inside and out dictating. Here's the bedroom set that my grandma, handed down, but it's an antique. Here's the outside of my house. We replaced our roof last year, or here's, blah, blah, blah. And then take that video file and put it somewhere safe. Send it to somebody that you trust, or put it in a folder where you'll be able to find it. And then if, God forbid, you do have a fire, you don't have to go through that extremely painful process of trying to reconstruct your list. But I hope your listeners never have to be there. But it's great that you're bringing them all this good information. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amy. That was great content. Appreciate you being with us today.
My pleasure.
Cobb, do you need to do an ID before we start with segment 2?
Let's keep on moving. But yeah, you're tuned to KZYX Radio. This is the Mendocino County Fire Safe Council radio show. If you just tuned in, we were just interviewing, our last guest was Amy Bach of the United Policyholders. I believe that website again, before you go, Amy, just tell them the website. And thank you. Uphelp.org. There you go. And take it from there, Scott.
Okay. We are pleased to have with us Assemblymember Jim Wood today. Jim has been in the forefront of working to improve legislation around a lot of aspects of wildfire readiness. So I just want to start by asking him what his personal connection is there, why that's so front and center in the work he's been doing.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. And it's good to see Amy on the screen here, although this is radio, so nobody can see anything in your listeners' world out there. But I think for me, what got me interested in this was my district, Santa Rosa, the area that I represent. The northern part of Santa Rosa was devastated by the Tubbs fire. Redwood Valley, that area was devastated at the same time. You don't go into this job, you go into this job expecting that you're going to focus on certain things, and then life gets in the way and changes the course of what you do. And so a great deal of work we've been doing in recent years has been around wildfire prevention and preparedness, and also trying to deal with some of those thorny insurance issues that Amy was talking about. And I just want to say before we go on here, I want to plug her again for her expertise. But that last message she had, it take you 5 minutes to walk around your house and take a video of your house. It could be the most important 5 minutes of your life as you deal with an insurance company, if you hopefully never have to do it. But I did it in my own business. I had a good friend who lost his practice in a fire, and he said he was underinsured. And so I went around, and every room in my business I photographed. I put it all on a disc in those days and put it in my safe deposit box, and I updated it every year. And it's a simple thing, but if you're trying to reconstruct your life for an insurance company under all the stress that you've already experienced, you won't be able to do it. You'll forget something. And picture is worth 1,000 words. And in this case, pictures may be worth thousands and thousands of dollars.
Great. Thank you. But before we take a plunge into what's coming up on the legislative horizon, I wanted to give you a chance to sort of catch us up with what's been accomplished recently. You could just spend a little while talking about what you've been involved in the last couple of years, and maybe two sides of the coin. What are the things that were achieved that you think are the most important, and what are the things that didn't quite happen yet that for some reason that we need to focus on?
Well, it's great. Thank you. And thank you very much. Go back to, back in 2018, there was a bill, it was Senate Bill 901. There was a special committee that was created to do this bill that was kind of a response to what happened with the major fires in 2017. And through that, working with my Republican colleague, then Assembly Member Brian Dolly to the east, the two of us put together what we called, ultimately was called the Dolly Wood Plan. And what it was taking, asking for $1 billion and getting $1 billion over a 5-year period for forest health and fire resilience. And so that was a big deal. And where we got it from was a big deal, because we got it from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. And we forced people to think about things differently. If we're going to try to reduce greenhouse gases, we need to recognize that forest fires and these wildfires are big emitters of carbon. And so that was a big thing, because most of the California Air Resources Board focus on automobile pollution and other kinds of things, and so to make that change was a really, really big deal. And it came in part due to a one-on-one conversation with Governor Brown, who said, he said, explain to me your rationale here. And I laid it out, and he said, that makes sense. And he endorsed the plan, actually gave us, we weren't quite at the level of that $1 billion, but with what he was able to, push forward, it would end up being $1 billion over 5 years. Fast forward, we worked on a bill, AB 38, which created the first ever statewide home hardening program. And funding had been a challenge for that, but funding went out the door this year for that. And we're hopeful that with the revision of the budget in May, coming up on Friday, there will be additional funding there. We are working on something this year that, while it's not in the past, is certainly something we're focusing on, and that's basically support for regional specific planning, looking at local expertise, recognizing that this state, as big and diverse as it is, needs to be looked at on a regional basis. What we experience in Mendocino County is not what you experience in, San Bernardino County or Ventura County or whatever. The topography is different. And so the idea that we can create local experts to draw down resources to work on projects with their own local expertise is not typically the way state does things. We're sort of a one-size-fits-all approach to a lot of things, and that usually means our rural counties suffer. And so we're working closely on that one this year, and hope that we will get additional resources for that. And then we did, looking at the insurance part of it, with the FAIR plan, we did a bill that creates a little insurance finder tool. Believe it or not, the big guys out there who many people are insured by, as they let customers go. There's hundreds of companies out there in the marketplace, and so could we not figure out a way to those people that are on the FAIR plan to link up with maybe a smaller company that could still provide resources or provide insurance for someone at a competitive rate? And so the idea was to try to connect those consumers who are now on the FAIR plan with other providers out there who were not. And I think that was that's kind of a step in the right direction. But those are the things we have been working on. You asked about disappointing things or things we haven't been able to get across the line?
Well, before we move there, actually, just let me step back and ground a couple of those, because I think I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I believe that the Dolly Wood package that you mentioned, is what ultimately is funding the community chipper days that are happening in Mendocino County this year. So it's an opportunity for people to have to do a bunch of clearing and not burn that carbon, but have it chipped and preserved. And so a concrete example, if you wonder if politics has concrete benefits in the world, one of those benefits is that you can go to chipperday.com/Mendocino right now and get yourself signed up for a day. That's a direct benefit from that program. Similarly, just wanted to point out on the home hardening thing, the Mendocino County Fire Safe Council and the County of Mendocino had outreach from the people who were organizing that program literally last week, and had the opportunity to spend time with them, giving advice about how to put it together in a way that will work for Mendocino. and some of our more rural locations. So again, benefits that are working their way down the line. So anyway, with that, if we could turn it back to you and you could tell us a little bit about the things that you wanted to have happen and are still trying to figure out how to have happen.
Well, thanks. And I'm gonna go ahead just for a second and backtrack a little and plug your chipper program. Emily, who works in my office in Ukiah, she took advantage of that this last weekend, and she said it was fabulous, and it worked really, really well for her. And I encourage people to sign up for that. It's she said it couldn't have been more seamless, and they got a lot of work done that they probably would not have been able to get done otherwise. And so that program is awesome, and more power to you. If we could find a way to get you 2 or 3 more chippers, who knows what you might be able to accomplish. But thank you for your efforts on that. And that's the kind of thing that we want to see happen, statewide. We want to, people who recognize what the needs are in their area, and then go after it and make it work for them. And so I applaud your work on that. It's been fabulous, and I hope more people take advantage of it. As you accomplish things in this business, I don't think people ever really realize how difficult it is to get a bill across the line and get it actually signed by the governor. Everybody, everybody chips away at it. And what started out as a really good idea sometimes it ends up being whittled down to maybe you still have the concept there, but everybody takes a bite out of the apple, and hopefully at the end of the day you get something accomplished. But there are things that are really hard and intractable almost. But one of the biggest disappointments to me is, and that's just because of the diverse nature of this state, is that there isn't more focus and urgency on prevention. I don't know how much more we have to have happen for people to get the message that you can protect your property, and you can prevent the loss of your property if you do this right. And it's not a guarantee, but you give yourself a much bigger chance. And so I don't know what you do, but I do know this, that one of the big challenges for us is that in Northern California, we're pretty far away from LA and that area. And that's where the control of a lot of resources are. 27 members of the state assembly are from Los Angeles. And so I got to figure out a way to entice them to vote on bills that they may not ordinarily want to vote on because they don't see it as affecting them. This last year was different. A lot more fire throughout the state, a lot more smoke. And I think there is a reality that's setting in that this is a bigger problem. We need to pay attention to it. We still need significant help on the homeowners insurance availability, and that's really frustrating. But because of Prop 103 that was passed in 1988, there's not a lot we can do in that space. It's really difficult to change a voter approved proposition. You got to go back to the voters, and that's a huge challenge for us. And then I think the other one, which is a big problem for us that we wish we would do more of, is prescribed fire. Especially in Northern California, it's so difficult to do a prescribed fire project between the analysis with CEQA, all of the permits you have to get, the very limited time scopes that you can actually do these burns. And then the other big challenge is insurance. How do you insure for that in case the fire creates some damage out there? And so, it could take a year more planning to do a 50-acre prescribed burn. And at that rate, we're never going to do what we need to do. And so I'm looking forward to learning more from our tribal partners up in the north. The Karuk have done a fabulous job and actually are training people in this space. And I plan to visit them this summer and learn more about their work. And, those are the disappointments that we have. And, but at the end of the day, you just keep fighting and keep pushing, and you chip away at it. Here I go. I'm sorry. You started with wood chippers. Now I can't stop thinking about things like that, but I keep pushing and hoping we'll be successful.
Assemblymember Wood, this is Cobb in the KZWAC studio. Thanks for the puns. Intended, I hope, but I'm wondering if you can update our listeners who maybe are unfamiliar. You mentioned, what was it, Prop 103 in 1988 as being somewhat of a barrier regarding insurance. Could you just give us a quick what that is for people who may not know anything about it?
Well, I think Prop 103 came along, and I now you've caught me, and I should have had more coffee probably, but basically around property taxes and the inability to, you can only raise property taxes at a certain rate every year. But it's also tied, I believe there's also ties to auto insurance, other kinds of insurance. The challenge being that insurance is really regulated in this state. And so it really is going to take some reform on the proposition level that to give us an opportunity. Prop 13 was the property tax one. I'm sorry. Prop 103 is more related to bigger insurance reforms, and it makes rate changes and flexibility really, really difficult. And how we amend that or change that, I don't know. But a lot of these issues really are in the hands of the insurance commissioner, and I would welcome more engagement, quite frankly.
And I have one question linked to that, and maybe you and our director at the Fire Safe Council could speak to it. But I'm just curious about the power when it comes to insurance down the road of neighborhood collective action, such as been what Fire Safe Council's done. And regarding homeowners insurance, it used to be a thing, I believe it was at a national level, that Granges offered homeowners insurance, and that got canceled a number of years ago. I know a lot of people in Anderson Valley were members of the Grange system in particular for that insurance access. But moving forward, what's going to be the benefits of, neighbors getting together to maybe get like a group insurance plan? Is that anything that can gain traction, or that you or the director have any knowledge about?
Well, that's an interesting concept, and I think that's absolutely worth exploring. Sometimes what's old is new again, and maybe we're at a point where we need to go back and look at that. I think one of the things that I have found frustrating about the insurance industry is that you as the homeowner could actually do everything right and protect your home, and you really don't see much benefit. Even if you could even lose your insurance because they decide to cancel an entire zip code. And you're also susceptible to what your neighbors may or may not have done. And so that creates another challenge for you. But what if a group of neighbors all got together and made their homes as fire safe as possible and did all the home hardening things that we like to do? And then approached an insurance company about that. Okay, here we are. We're kind of a model little group of people. Will you insure us? And maybe that's another approach that we haven't tried. But I like that idea, and I'll go back and research that. But I think it has been frustrating that you could actually do everything right in your home and still find that your policy gets canceled because you live in a zip code, and that's what the company has decided they're going to do.
There are some small inroads in that direction. This is Scott. I know that's one of the things that Amy's working on. And I know the California Fire Safe Council at that level is working on trying to find some way to systematize at least discounts that come with certain levels of preparedness. And the only thing that I know that's in place like that at the moment is we have fire safe councils at the county level that are fairly flexible and open organizations, and it's a low bar. We've got some that do a little and some that do a tremendous lot. And then there's the national FireWise certification that your community or group can go ahead and get. And if you become a FireWise community, there are some standards around that, and there are at least some insurers that'll provide a discount based on your area being part of a FireWise community. So that's just a step in the direction that we need to go.
Yeah. But wouldn't it be nice if a community did everything right and could then approach it on a larger scale, and everybody benefits from that in the long run.
Something I'm familiar with, and I was kind of hoping, it looks like we might have Amy with us, and maybe not. And if she can speak to this concept as well, it'd be great. But I know that at least
staying on to listen to Assemblymember Wood.
Yeah. Well, something that exists that's sort of like that, I know, and I'm not very well informed, but it's something I believe called an ISO rating. I know that through our local fire department, they strive to keep the resource availability as far as water trucks, fire response times, where our fire stations are located, strategically, because it affects something called an ISO rating. And if that number's at such a level, homeowners get certain rates or certain discounts on their insurance or certain coverage eligibilities. And if any of you can speak to that concept and how it might relate, thanks.
So I think what you're talking about maybe is something called the Fireline Score, which is something that, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years ago, a private company developed a model, kind of like a credit score, where they would put a house, assign a score to a house based on its slope, meaning the whether it's on a steep area, fuels, which is how much foliage is there around it, and access, how easy would it be for a fire truck to get there. So slope, fuels, access. That's what went into the model. And this private company sold it to a bunch of insurance companies. And suddenly, out of nowhere, people were getting this number slapped on their house, and it was affecting their insurance. So like when United Policyholders would do surveys, we do surveys of homeowners and asked, well, what was the reason you were given for why your insurance company was non-renewing you, dropping you? We got a lot of answers back. Our Fireline score was too high. Okay, so it turns out that this scoring system, and ISO has something to do with it, but the main thing for people, that's one of the things I think the legislature will probably take up again, is to give people the ability to at least see their score, just like you have the right to see your credit score and know what's in it. In fact, I think Assemblymember Wood and I, we've talked about this, because it's one of these things where it turns out when the insurer slaps this number on you, it really affects you financially, just like your credit score does. It affects how much you're going to pay for your insurance. So at the very least, we want people to be able to make sure there's no errors in their score. And then in our effort to try to get more insurers to come back or to take more customers in the state, we are trying to, we are a little bit focused on getting them to broaden or raise the Fireline score number that they will accept. Because right now, insurers have been very conservative. This is a new tool that they got, and they've been really using it. And we're trying to say, okay, if you won't take somebody who has a Fireline score above a 5, and it goes from 1 to 30, could we get you, what would it take to get you to take somebody up to a 10, for example? It's just another thing that those of us who are trying to help solve these problems are exploring. Could we make Fireline scoring more transparent and maybe more accurate? And also, can we get insurers to be more open-minded about taking customers that are above a 5, for example, because they have been taking a very narrow view ever since the scoring system came into place.
Yeah, and I would just add, I think that, the idea that, the fact that there really isn't much transparency around these numbers, they kind of use them internally, and I think decide, okay, you're out. what if you knew what that number was, and what if you as a community or a homeowner could actually do things to improve? Give the homeowner a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, you can improve your FICO score, for crying out loud. Why can't you improve your fire score? You can't pick up your home and move it somewhere. In most cases, but you ought to be able to make changes to your property that make it more fire safe. And shouldn't you be at least have the opportunity, not necessarily even be rewarded, but just given the opportunity to buy a product that everyone else can buy? And it just seems the way the system is right now is there's a lot of bean counters somewhere, and they're all assessing risk. But they're not really looking at the individual homeowner. It's much easier to do this on a broader base, and that's frustrating.
Very true. Yeah, our message to insurers has been: can you partner with your customers? Don't just punish them.
Great. So we are kind of coming to the end of the time here, and a couple of things I want to get in. Assemblymember Wood, first of all, I'd like to sort of see what you think people should be doing to help things along out there. If there are any particular legislation that you think people should be paying attention to and supporting. I know there's a bunch, like the insurance standards for prescribed burns, I think is going to be in play this year. And then if we have time, I'd like to close with a little bit of good news and just give you a moment to talk about the good stuff that's in the budget this year. But first of all, what can people be doing to help row in the right direction now?
Well, I would hope, get a chance. And I know it's technical and not easy, but if you call our office, we'll give you a fact sheet. Our AB 9, I think, is a really important piece of legislation. We've been working on it for months now. It's kind of, we're taking what we learned from AB 38 and applying it to AB 9. And my legislative director, Paul Ramey in the office, has become one of the experts in the building on these issues. And he certainly didn't plan it that way. These are the cards we were all dealt. And we're constantly looking for more regional approaches to these kinds of issues. You're absolutely right. The insurance battle is, insurance for prescribed burn battle is going to be a big deal. Changing that liability standard is going to be fought heavily by trial attorneys, quite frankly, and that one change away to the more of a gross negligence standard would open up fire, a lot of prescribed fire in the state. And I think that's a really, really big step in the right direction if we're actually going to be committed to prescribed burn. If we're not, then let's throw up our hands and say, we're really not committed to that. We're never going down that path. And, but some of these barriers I think are artificial, quite frankly. So, but so those are the things, and I apologize, there's trucks and stuff working around my place today here, so in the Capitol. So let's talk about some of the good things that are coming. And because I know we have a limited amount of time. There was early action on the budget on the 13th of last month. That was making up for the tough budget that we had last year. And in that was $536 million total. That's a pretty big number. $155 million of that went to forest restoration and fuel reduction. $123 million went to fire breaks and community protection work. $25 million went to home hardening, which is important to me. That's part of my AB 38 from a couple of years ago. We'll be looking significantly at the May revised, which will be coming out on Friday, which actually will be setting the stage for the 21-22 year coming up. And so my hope is that there'll be more money there. We need to, continue focusing on home preparedness and a variety of other things out there. But right now, it's good money. It's good news. That $25 million for AB 38 will hopefully allow us to pull down another $75 million from the federal government, which would be $100 million. And that was in the early action. We're hoping we get more of that to be able to do that in the future. But right now, it's really all about the budget until Friday. And so we see what's coming out. And then that budget, because there was so much at play this year, the budget negotiations and things, well, we will pass a budget on June 15th, which will be kind of the bare bones, how we operate in California. Because of the huge amount of resources that are now available to the state, we expect the budget negotiations to continue well into August. As we figure out how we apply these resources. And a lot of this should go towards, in my mind, prevention, fire prevention, and preparedness.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time with us. I think we're at our final couple of seconds here. I don't know, Cobb, do we have time for any wrap, or should we should probably tuck it in here?
We're coming right up, everybody. You're tuned to KZYX, and Loose Cannon Classics is coming right up. Thanks so much for being here, Director Scott Craddy and Assemblymember Jim Wood.